sana, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Cinema Corner. Today we are privileged to speak to a scholar, a thespian, a filmmaker, and one of the happiest people I have met. He has done so much in the theatre and film industry, including pioneering the film section of the Kenya National Drama Festival, which has grown from, I think, less than 100 films and now dealing with thousands of films. So he is also a lecturer in the University of Nairobi, and you'll definitely see him in many forums which concern arts education and film. Karibu sana, Daktari.
Thank you.
Yes, to begin with, I like starting with majina kamili.
Simon Peter Otieno, that's my name. And I teach theatre and film studies at the University of Nairobi.
Well, that sounds very brief and very modest.
And up to the point.
Up to the point. But now today, I want that point to grow. I want that point to grow into a line. So we'll start by trying to know, we've met Dr. Otieno akiwa who he is with his very nicely shonward vitenges. But where did this person come from?
I come from Ahero, that is a small town next to Kisumu town, that's Kisumu County. That's where I was born. I went to school, I did my primary at Starehe Boys Center, and that's where I first developed performing arts interest. Every Saturday we'll be watching a film. The whole school will go to the main hall, watch a film, and once every month there was a major production. And at the end of every term there was inter-house drama festival. So of course with us, we will be there watching. Quite a bit of the time we were more an audience than anything else. So that is where we first developed our interest in theatre. I happened to go to secondary school, to a seminary, because I wanted to become a priest. Changed my mind along the way, and then went to the university, Catholic University. And from there I did my master's at the University of Nairobi, and then I went for my PhD at the University of Leeds. So when I came back, I worked at the Catholic University, went to KU, and then KU, Kenyatta University, and then eventually landed back home, so to speak, at the University of Nairobi. Yeah.
I like the way you are bridging this information. I like the way you're putting it in order. So I'm assuming you're a student of the Great Griffin.
Yes, I am.
So what I'm trying to understand, you've mentioned that you were in Starehe Boys Center.
Yes.
But then you went to a seminary.
Yes.
High school.
Yes.
What do you mean by that? Did you go to two schools, or which system were you in?
No, when I left Starehe Boys did not have the option of training priests. So I went to a school that could train priests. And that's what we call a seminary.
So how many years did you do in Starehe? You went up to Form 4?
No, I did up to Form 6. We were the last group of Form 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
So which year is that?
Form 5 and Form 6 I was in Kisii. That was 1998, 99. I think so. No, 1988, 89. And then 1990 I jumped into... Actually, I taught for a brief point. After high school, I taught at, and that's why I also started directing plays. I taught in two high schools in the village. One of them is called Lela Secondary School, and then I went to Otieno. Actually, I was poached to go to Otieno, because when I went to Lela, just after high school, and you want to develop your skills, and we went for the festival. I came in the first term just as the students were preparing for the festival, and there was no teacher who understood how drama worked. Apparently, I had a background in directing, so I managed to do a play with them. They went and beat the school of the chairman of drama in the district, which was Otieno High School. So that principal, Mr. Adu, told me, "Hey, come this way. because it's not good for a small school to beat a big school. You can be, you could be doing drama in my school. So somehow I went there. And then after that, I joined the university.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in the university, what were you doing?
I did a B.Ed. I'm a trained teacher. Languages, or rather English and literature. Then masters, I majored on literature, yes, but drama. You know, drama is the written bit of theater. So from there, I ventured into theater and performing arts, and that is how I came into film.
All right. And I think we are talking about the early 90s, yeah?
Yes.
All right. So that time seemed to be like part of the golden era of the traveling theater in University of Nairobi.
Yes.
Tell us about that. How were you able to engage? Who are you working with? What productions did you do that time?
Well, I was not necessarily in the mainstream theater, traveling theater. At that time, Dr. Pio Muma was in charge, and he was doing quite a lot. When I came to do my master's, there was already the theater was running, and at that time, if I remember well, they were doing, they were actually performing this play, The River and the Source, and I think there were also some short stories that were on the sideline, on the side plate. But at that time, I was also engaged with training high schools, you know, for my own practice, and that's why I worked with Upper Hill High School. We would go and devise stories with the students and then try to put them on stage, and they learned quite a bit. I must say, Sauti Sol, you know, is a team that came from Upper Hill. I think they were my students of drama.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there was quite a bit of that experimentation at the time, but the free traveling theater was really thriving at the time. That is true. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, give us a perspective of your philosophy of theater, or your approach of theater at that time, in terms of, were you going for style? Were you going for messaging? What was your interest in the theater?
Well, my interest was secondary. My interest was simply technique, but the real thing was getting the stories from the students. And I do remember when I first went to Upper Hill, actually they had requested, they wanted somebody to help teach the students acting and that kind of thing. When we went to Upper Hill, I found that it was a club like any other club in the city, you know. And the teachers said, now we want these students to get this training and then participate in the drama festival. So essentially, when I went there, I was going to teach acting, but I did not have the know-it-all. I mean, the students themselves devised their stories, and I remember the first story they ever devised was a very simple story about this character who was a superstar, was a good footballer, but at the time the story begins, he's living in the slums, pretty poor. And so when they workshopped that, I had to go back and see if I could script something. So we would always, it was a back and forth. We'll script, try something on stage, and then they will say, no, let us do this and this. Actually, at that point too, like I said, most of the clubs, and because most teachers are not trained to teach theater and even to run drama clubs, most of the clubs were run by students. And that essentially means it was a club of friends, whether talented or not. So when we went there and I told them, now we are going to look at people's capability and interests, there was a small problem. And so they said, no, we think we are all supposed to participate. Mm-hmm. And I told them, yes, participate, but let us give the right people the right roles. And in fact, the first play we ever had only 6 characters. So it was amazing, because when they went for the festival, again, you know, they did very well. From that time henceforth, actually, they dominated Nairobi regional festivals. Mm-hmm. At that time, it was provincials. Because they will devise and, you know, I will help with the acting and, you know, the training and so on and so forth.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So which was this specific year that you started working with Upper Hill?
I started working with Upper Hill when I was doing my master's at the University of Nairobi, and that should have been 1998.
1998.
Yes, 1998.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think there is one famed play that you did with Upper Hill.
That was the last, let me say, that was the last play that we had accorded everything we had. Because after that, I engaged with, I started doing my PhD, so I was on and off. It was difficult to really get time to sit down but the play, again, like I said, we are looking at messaging. The first time I went to Upper Hill, there was a story that had run, I think, on one of the TV channels about this. I don't know whether he was a Harambee Stars player, but he was languishing in alcohol, and he was actually almost, let me say, dying. He was so poor. And so that's how they came up with that play. But for this particular play you're talking about, I'm very sure you're talking about the Epitaph, the one that won the Nationals. Yeah. The Epitaph came in a background of the Chianguli fire disaster. And so the students themselves were really touched by that story. And so they said, let's devise something out of this. And so we built the story bit by bit. They actually started their rehearsals in 2000, first term, just after the Nationals. That year they had a play called Bacteria. And Bacteria, again, was a story of this policeman who took a bribe from a bus very early in the morning, not knowing that that was actually the bus he had taken a loan to buy. It went and crashed and killed many people. Again, a story from what happened to, I think it was Coast Bus at the time, that had crashed and killed almost everyone on board. I think it was either in Mwingi or along Mombasa Road. So, these are stories that were derived from our experiences.
Real happenings.
Exactly. So the Chianguli fire disaster was really painful. And I do remember when the students were performing at the provincials, some parents whose children had died at Chianguli had heard of the play, and they came to watch at Lenana. And it was really moving. But we are talking about style. The story is really sad. But if you watch the Epitaph, you will be laughing half the time. It was very, very comic. So generally, that is the play that put Upper Hill in the national map. Okay, they had been going for national, more or less for 4 or 5 years. But after that, obviously, my time was up because I needed to do my PhD. I had applied at the University of Leeds, and they had admitted me, so my focus was elsewhere. So most of the time, they were really struggling to get time to rehearse, or even to get somebody to help them in the acting, and then devising and making sure they bring the message out. So I think the last one they did with that kind of rehearsal was Bridge on Fire, which again, when I came from England, we did as a film. The very first time now we started engaging film in schools with the former director of quality assurance, Mr. Oyaya, and he allowed us to move around with that film. But it was from this play, done by Upper Hill students, again, about this girl who is very bright, but she comes from a poor family. When the story begins, she's pregnant. So what does she do? So that dilemma is what drives the story to its ultimate end. And again, it was also a very humorous piece. Unfortunately, I don't think we gave it enough time. Although it went for the nationals, I think it was number 1 or number 2 at the provincials. I can't remember. But the students enjoyed themselves at the nationals, and you know what nationals means for our students, especially going to Mombasa. So students will do anything to go to Mombasa. So. That's actually my last piece of engagement.
There was another play, I think, about Mungiki.
Yes. So we did quite a bit.
Vicissitudes or something. What was the title? It had an interesting title.
Yeah, I do remember that, The Mirage.
The Mirage.
It was called The Mirage, yes. And The Mirage was simply about Mungiki, because at that time, again, Mungiki was a problem. So this student thought we need to actually think about portraying Mungiki and showing are they a genuine group, and why do they attract the youth, and that kind of thing. So the students actually devised that. And when they devised it, they came up with the story. And again, that one also went up to the nationals.
Yes, I remember watching it. It was in Kisumu, 2003, I think.
Yes, that was long after we had done the the Epitaph. So at that time, the power of the students was also low. We had a group. Actually, one main reason why the Epitaph was successful is because the Epitaph was more or less a culmination of the students with whom I started when I went to Upper Hill. So every year, incidentally, those students will tell you they never went for any half-term. All the half-terms we were in school devising.
And rehearsing.
Holidays, they will take half their holiday, they will be coming back to school every day for 2 weeks, not really rehearsing, but devising concepts and, working like that. So here is a group that has been rehearsing for 4 years. Okay, trying several plays, blah, 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 for all the time. So in the 4th year, I can tell you I had a powerful team, a team that knew theater inside out. And the principal was very, very good because Mr. Moore here would always make sure if there was a function, a theater somewhere, you know, a production, the students will go and watch. If there was something somewhere, he will actually give them transport and lunch. He was a very good principal. And again, like we say, without a good principal, these things do not really succeed. You won't teach theater effectively unless unless you have a principal who understands and who knows how theater works. Yeah.
All right. I know during I know, but we need people to know. During your, PhD, it involved a lot of performance, and I think that is where the next part of the story actually develops. Even I think film and my old my alma mater, where I've never stepped since I finished my last paper.
Shame on you. Shame on you.
I think I'll carry my shame happy. Anyway, tell us about that period of the PhD, because I think that was a very defining time for...
Well, my PhD generally was on performance in general, but I was focusing on performance. At the time, HIV was an issue, so I was looking at performance in the context of HIV and AIDS. And I must say, because I came from Upper Hill, I had a lot of leeway in terms of devising with the Upper Hill students. So they even started, we tried films. We tried shooting some films there on short stories that will be communicative. And we were looking at performing arts as a medium of communication. More or less, and at that time, actually, there were so many NGOs that would do the same. Many NGOs would work really hard to make sure they tackled the issue of HIV and AIDS in the varied communities, which is unlike now when, nobody's doing anything anywhere. We expect the government to keep telling us about corona every evening. Oh, today so many people died. And so if I'm not going to be political, but, the approach is top down instead of down up. It's not bottoms up. Right. So the idea is theater as a tool has been totally disregarded. But at that time, you see, there was a lot of that. And so what had happened is that in one chapter of my thesis, I was looking at theater and performance that is not meant for the festival. And that's where Kayole 1 came in. I also looked at theater meant for the festival. That's where Upper Hill came in. And so the most interesting bit was the one of Kayole 1, because these children will devise stories, and they were very good at singing and dancing, that we were compelled, actually with the principal, Mr. Kuria, we were compelled to try and look for a way of recording their voices and recording these things, because once in a while they will be called by an NGO when there's a function. Let's have the Kayole children coming to either dance, sing, and that kind of thing. So we thought, instead of them wasting too much time during class time, why can't we record these things? And so the first thing they did, we started with the dancing and the singing and made some music videos. And we were shocked when these music videos ended up on Aphrodisia, this very famous program show on Citizen TV, featuring the best music of Africa, and that is where, again, the interest of the ministry developed. Apparently, there are people at the ministry who are very keen. And I do remember in one workshop at Kasarani, Mr. Sirengo Haemba, the quality assurance officer in charge of drama at the time, asked, who is this who produces these things for these children? Because this is where drama is supposed to go. Apparently, he was asking in my presence. So I told him I could get him a copy of what these children were doing. And he said, now, what we do, could you come and talk to teachers about how film can work in schools? At that time, of course, he had the background of, we had moved around with Bridge on Fire. Actually, Mr. Oyaya had given us permission to move to at least 4 schools. One in Machakos. We were given the Eastern Block. Okay. One in Machakos, one in Kitui, one in Meru, one in Embu. So we went to Mumbuni Girls, and that was our first show of the film. And it became so popular. By the time, actually, instead of showing to 4 schools, we showed it to 16 schools and had to cancel many shows because KCSC was on the Form 4 exam was just setting in. So, given that background, you know, the introduction of film in schools more or less grew up from this Kayole thing. So when I was told to go and give a workshop, I talked to teachers about how film works and taking the basics. At that time, digital technology was just developing. So we took, we will take a camera and an editing suite, very simple. At that time, we were using Pinnacle. Pinnacle was very, very prominent at the time. And we will say that, okay, you try to shoot, try to edit, and that kind of thing. So the first workshop was rather scanty until the then VC, okay, by the time I moved to the University of Nairobi, the Vice Chancellor was Professor Magoha, and he gave a very interesting, you know, support, because we wanted to have a workshop for teachers on film production. So Haemba asked me to see if the University of Nairobi could support. And through the Department of Literature, at that time the chair was Professor Kabira. Professor Magoha gave us the go ahead rather, and funded the whole thing, you know, alongside the ministry. And so at the YMCA, right behind the university, we had all these teachers. We had actually 47 teachers. That was in 2011. And the assumption was, Mr. Haemba was projecting that in the next festival, we would have the normal festival, but at 5, we will all sit and watch one film every day. So we had expected 8 films, because we had 8 major days and, of course, 4 days of the gala and so on and so forth. We were surprised that the following year we had 37 films.
We will take a short break.
Of the 37 films, only 4 teachers had come for the workshop.
Oh la la.
So that tells you it was an idea whose time actually was...
that is the point I want us to take. Just a short break.
Right.
So that when we come back now, we can start eating the meat of film in the drama festival. So when we come back, we'll continue with Dr. Otieno to still get more nuggets about now the film festival. It started as the film festival within drama festival, but now it's a film festival. Still within the drama festival, but seemingly very, very vibrant. And well, we'll talk about the future.